the house. Verona, do you hear that? Before Nico could retort that yes, Rhodes, if she could hear it, he could obviously hear it just as well. There was a strange, disorienting ringing from inside his ears. It filled his mind with a vacant whiteness, blinding him behind closed eyes. He vaguely felt a sharp sting of some kind, like the entry wound of a needle. Something stung his shoulder, and he wanted to swat it away. Only the screech of white that somehow filled his ears and eyes was debilitating, paralyzing. He felt pressure inside his head that threatened to fill the space, like a rapidly expanding tumor. Then the ringing faded just enough that he could open his eyes, and he saw that Libby was speaking, or trying to. Verona, her mouth was saying, Verona, it's away. Way, no, not away. He blinked, his vision clearing. A wave. That helped. He tried to raise his right hand and faltered from pain, switching to the left to take a hold of the particle of sound and aim it like a whip until it cracked. Libby, now freed the effort of dragging him from the sound wave's immobilizing effect, extinguished it with a spark. Can't be a test, she finished, and Nico realized the pain in his shoulder was much more than a sting. The wound was slick with blood, and as far as he could tell, that didn't typically happen with magical weapons. That, Libby was saying with horror, is not a fake injury. It's a gunshot wound, observed Parissa, whoever they are, they must not be magical. Made sense. Even if the first shot had been some type of magic, certain forms could be easily provided to a buyer with enough money. And mediums were rare enough that sending in a group of them would probably be a waste. Guns were cheaper and perfectly effective. Case in point, Nico growled with annoyance, clotting his blood with a wave of his hand. But this can't be the society's doing, Libby protested. Surely we're supposed to do something. There's at least one medium here, Nico gritted through his teeth, struggling to rise. He wasn't going to bother with easing the pain, as that would only require more energy than he could spare at the moment. It wasn't a lethal wound by any means, and he could heal it later. We should split up, I think. I can take care of the rest if Rhodes looks for the median. The rest, echoed Callum doubtful. That's a mess you've got on your shoulder. It's not a pistol, it's an automatic rifle. You could be dealing with military special ops. Thank you ever so, replied Nico crassly, as another round was fired from below. He knew perfectly what he was dealing with, which was precisely the point. They wouldn't bother arming a bunch of medians with AKs. He shouted over the sound of weaponry, just like they wouldn't send in mortals without magical oversight. If it was a military task force of some sort, they were probably being commanded by a median, and if he's good at ways, Rose will hear him coming. Then we should split up, said Parissa, who was at least very cool-headed. Yes, good idea. You stay with me, Nico suggested to her. Rhodes can take Tristan and Raina can go with. I'll stay, said Raina. What, said Cam and Libby. Raina seemed undeterred. Nico's the one taking on more people. I have combat experience. Nico glanced at her. You do? Well, I trained in hand-to-hand combat, she amended, which sounded an awful lot if she had merely read a lot of books on the subject. Besides, you lot seem to think I'm useless at my specialty, don't you? We don't really have a lot of time to argue, Libby pointed out, cutting in before anyone else could speak. Parissa, take Callum, she said. Anything, Nico suggested. Guess to get out of going with Callum himself, and Verona's right, Tristan can come with me. Fine, said Parissa flatly. I can find the median in the house. Good, and we'll check the access points. That was about as much as Nico had the patience to discuss when it came to logistics. By then his arm had gone a little numb, probably because of his mind was leaping ahead to the prospect of fending off the intruders. He had been very, very good at the physicist tournament, voted MVP 4 years running, in fact, and as good as Libby may or may not have been, fine she was, but still, she had never once beaten him. Nico had a taste for adrenaline. Besides, he had to see someone about a bullet wound. In his not so humble opinion, he was richly owed. Come on, Nico called to Raina, leaping atop the gallery's banister and beckoning her after him into the hall of gunfire below, shielding himself with a hand outstretched. Meet you down there. Verona, Libby sighed. You do realize there are stairs? He wasn't listening. Shots were fired. Surprise, surprise, but he was ready for them now. He sipped one as easily as he might have ducked a punch, catching the uniform that suggested he'd been right. This was some sort of military task force. Fun, exciting, all of them against him. How terribly unfortunate they hadn't thought to bring a party twice as large. He curled the floor and slightly funneling them all into an invisible drain. Better that way. to see how many. He counted 6 and smiled to himself, returning the floors to how they've been. The gunman stumbled. They shot towards him. It was Raina, to Nico's surprise, who took aim first, sending a bolt of something very crude but very fast into the chest of an oncoming gunman. It knocked the wind out of the gunman, sending out the butt of his rifle flying into the face of his comrade. By the sound of his swearing, Nico guessed an American, maybe CIA. That, he thought, was a shiver of anticipation, would be very exciting indeed. He had never been important enough to merit assassination before. More shots were fired, which certainly wouldn't do. One bullet wound was plenty. After waiting a moment to take the impact through a temporary shield of his making, Nico took hold of the nearest gunman and aimed him in a circle, prompting the others to launch themselves behind the aristocrat furniture for cover. A little tug of gravity out from under them sent them floating in slow motion, the rifles drifting from their hands. Nico summoned their weapons and disassembled them with a single explosive blow, sending the components flying like a shrapnel as an ordinary forces in the room returned. There, he thought, now let's really have a fight.